When my sister first announced her wedding, it felt like the start of something magical. Weddings always carry an air of anticipation, but when it's your own sibling preparing to take such a huge step, the emotions run deeper. I remember the day she told us. It wasn't with a big dramatic reveal or some carefully staged moment. It was just a casual family gathering, the kind where we sit around the living room drinking tea and laughing about old memories. She suddenly smiled, glanced at her fiancé sitting beside her, and with the simplest words said, "We've set the date." For a moment, there was complete silence before everyone erupted into cheers, clapping, hugging, and tossing playful comments. It was one of those moments where joy seems to fill every corner of the room, and you realize this is going to be the start of a new chapter for your family. For me, my sister isn't just a sibling. She's someone I grew up with, shared secrets with, and leaned on through the chaos of life. Seeing her ready to walk down the aisle felt surreal. We started reminiscing right then about how as little girls we used to wrap bed sheets around ourselves, pretending to be brides, holding flowers stolen from the garden, and walking dramatically down the hallway as if it were an aisle. She had always dreamed about her wedding day, and now that it was finally happening, there was an unspoken sense of pride in my heart. She was about to step into a future she had wished for, and I wanted nothing more than to support her in every way. Almost immediately, the conversation shifted to plans. The color schemes, the venue options, the guest list, the dresses, everything was up in the air, but the energy was infectious. Everyone had suggestions. Everyone wanted to be part of the process. My sister glowed with that unmistakable happiness, that look a person carries when their dreams are taking shape right before their eyes. Her fiancé was quiet but supportive, smiling at her every word, as though he was happy simply watching her excitement unfold. My parents were already stressing over logistics and traditions, while the younger cousins were giddy about the chance to dress up, eat good food, and dance until their feet hurt. I remember looking at my daughter's face during that moment. 17 years old, standing on the cusp of adulthood, she lit up with excitement at the thought of being part of something so beautiful. For her, weddings were more than just family gatherings, they were fairy tales coming to life. She admired her aunt deeply and had often spoken about how much she looked forward to seeing her walk down the aisle. My daughter's joy mirrored my own. She kept whispering little comments to me about dresses she could wear, hairstyles she wanted to try, and how she couldn't wait to be part of the celebrations. Her energy only made me more certain that this wedding was going to be a memory she would treasure for years. As the weeks passed, the buzz in our family group chats and phone calls was relentless. My sister sent us pictures of possible venues, elegant halls, open gardens, even rustic barn-like spaces with twinkling lights. We all debated about which one felt right. She wanted something timeless yet modern, something that would feel personal and not just like another cookie-cutter event. Conversations spilled late into the night, with my sister sending links to bridal gowns, accessories, or floral arrangements, asking us what we thought. It was as if the entire family was swept into the tide of wedding fever. Even those who lived far away promised they would make the trip, no matter how inconvenient, just so they wouldn't miss it. For me, there was also a deep layer of nostalgia. Watching my younger sister plan her wedding reminded me of how quickly time had flown. It felt like just yesterday we were teenagers, staying up late to talk about crushes and dreams, imagining what our futures might look like. And now here she was, living one of those dreams, while I stood by as both her sister and a parent, navigating my own life while still cherishing hers. There was a bittersweet feeling in that contrast, seeing her step into her future while remembering the past we once shared. The wedding was more than just an event. It was a symbol of family, tradition, and change. It was a moment where our lives would all gather, pause, and celebrate love. My daughter, more than anyone, was invested in the idea of celebrating her aunt. She wanted to be part of the preparations, wanted to help pick out decorations, and even offered to assist with small tasks. Every time my sister updated us on her plans, my daughter's eyes sparkled, and she would immediately start talking about what role she could play in making it special. By the time the invitations were being drafted, it felt as though every little detail was falling into place. The excitement grew stronger, the expectations higher, and the sense of togetherness more real. The wedding was no longer just my sister's big day. It felt like the entire family was standing on the edge of something grand, ready to step into those celebrations together. And in the middle of it all was my daughter, waiting eagerly for her chance to stand proudly by her aunt's side. From the very moment my daughter learned that her aunt was getting married, her excitement was impossible to contain. She had always been the kind of girl who adored family gatherings, someone who believed in the magic of celebrations and the way they brought everyone together. At 17, she was at that age where childhood wonder still lingered, but maturity had started to shape her perspective. So, when news of the wedding spread through the family, she immediately began imagining herself as part of it, not just as a guest, but as someone who could truly contribute to the joy of the occasion. She would come to me with questions almost every day. "Mom, do you think Andy will let me help with the flower arrangements? Or do you think I should wear something pastel? Or should I go bold with color?" Her enthusiasm was unfiltered, and I could see how much this meant to her. For her, this wasn't simply another family event. It was an opportunity to step into a world she admired so deeply. She had watched countless wedding videos, flipped through magazines, and even kept a little notebook filled with ideas she had collected over time. Now, with her aunt's wedding approaching, it felt like all of her daydreams were finally finding a place to exist. She spoke often about how weddings symbolize new beginnings, about how beautiful it must feel to have all your loved ones gathered to witness the start of a new journey. I found myself surprised by how thoughtful she was about it all. At 17, not everyone carries such depth of perspective, but my daughter often saw beyond the surface of things. She wasn't just interested in the glitz or the dresses, though she loved talking about those too. She was invested in the meaning, in the feeling of standing together as a family to celebrate something that went beyond the ceremony itself. Her bond with my sister played a big part in this excitement. Ever since she was little, she had looked up to her aunt like a role model. My sister was young at heart, always full of energy, the kind of person who could make my daughter laugh until her stomach hurt. They shared inside jokes, exchanged stories late at night during sleepovers, and had a closeness that was both playful and deeply affectionate. The idea of seeing her aunt as a bride, walking down the aisle, filled my daughter with pride. She often told me, "It's going to be the most beautiful day, Mom, and I can't wait to be there." She started preparing long before anyone asked her to. She browsed through dress shops online, bookmarking styles that she felt would fit the occasion. She experimented with hairstyles in front of the mirror, twisting and pinning her hair in new ways to see what might look elegant yet simple. Sometimes, I would catch her humming softly to herself while sketching little doodles of flowers or writing down a list of songs she thought would make perfect background music. Her anticipation wasn't just casual excitement, it was an entire world she was creating in her head, one that she couldn't wait to step into once the big day arrived. In the evenings, she would sit by me while I scrolled through family updates on my phone, waiting eagerly for new details about the wedding. "What did Annie say today? Did she pick the bridesmaids' dresses? Did she choose the cake flavor?" Her questions came one after another, her voice carrying that hopeful tone that only someone truly invested could have. Every little detail mattered to her because in her eyes, this wasn't just her aunt's wedding, it was something that belonged to all of us, something she was determined to be part of. Her friends at school started hearing about it too. She would talk about the wedding plans during lunch breaks, telling them how her aunt was considering different venues, how her mom and dad were busy helping with family discussions, and how she couldn't wait to dress up for the occasion. To her, it was more than an event. It was a story she was proud to share, a moment she wanted everyone to know she was connected to. She was already picturing the photos, the laughter, the music, and the warmth of family coming together. At home, she began practicing how to walk gracefully in heels, balancing herself across the living room floor as though it were a runway. She asked me if I thought she might have a role in the ceremony, perhaps handing out flowers, maybe even walking alongside the bridesmaids. I could see how much she longed for that inclusion, how deeply she wanted to feel like she belonged in the circle of people standing closest to the bride. Her confidence grew as she imagined herself playing even the smallest part. There were nights when she would lie awake, scrolling through pictures of wedding decorations online, and then come into my room to show me her favorites. "Look at this arch, Mom. Wouldn't this be beautiful for Auntie's entrance?" she'd ask, her eyes wide with wonder. Sometimes she even whispered about how she imagined her own wedding someday, though she always circled back to the present, reminding herself that for now it was her aunt's special moment. Through all of this, one thing became clear to me. My daughter's excitement wasn't superficial. It was heartfelt. She wasn't looking at this as just another outing or a chance to dress up. She saw it as an opportunity to stand with her family in love and unity, to celebrate someone she adored, and to be part of memories that she believed would last forever. It was during one of those casual conversations about the wedding that the news came out, and it caught me completely off guard. My sister, who had been so open and cheerful while sharing her plans with us, suddenly mentioned something that made my stomach twist. She said that my daughter wouldn't be allowed to attend the wedding. At first, I thought I had misheard her. I replayed the words in my head, trying to make sense of them. When I asked her to clarify, she said it again, this time with more firmness. "She's too young. I don't want teenagers at my wedding." I felt my heart sink instantly. Too young? My daughter was 17, practically on the edge of adulthood. This wasn't a child we were talking about, not someone who needed constant supervision or who would disrupt the event with restless behavior. She was mature, thoughtful, and more than capable of carrying herself with grace in any setting. To hear that she was being dismissed simply because of her age felt unfair and almost insulting. For a moment, I couldn't even respond. I just sat there, stunned, wondering if my sister really meant it or if it was some kind of misunderstanding. But as the conversation continued, it became painfully clear that she was serious. She explained that she wanted her wedding to be an adult-only event. She said she didn't want the energy to be disrupted by anyone under 18, that she was aiming for a sophisticated atmosphere where guests could drink, laugh, and celebrate without worrying about younger people being around. She even added that it wouldn't be fair to make an exception for my daughter when she was already telling other relatives with younger children that they couldn't bring them along. Her words stung, not just because of the rule itself, but because of how casually she said them. To her, it seemed like a simple boundary. To me, it was a rejection of my daughter, who had been so invested in the wedding, who had looked up to her aunt for years, and who had already started preparing in her own little ways to be part of the celebration. I couldn't help but think about how devastated she would be when she found out. All of her excitement, her planning, her daydreaming, it would all come crashing down with one sentence: "You're not invited." I tried to reason with my sister, gently reminding her that my daughter wasn't a child anymore, that she carried herself more maturely than some adults I knew. I told her how much it would mean to her to be present, how close the two of them were, and how hurtful it would be to exclude her. But my sister held her ground. She kept repeating that it was her wedding, her rules, and that she had every right to set the boundaries she wanted. And technically, she was right. But knowing she had the right didn't make it feel any less harsh. As the conversation ended, I felt an ache in my chest. My mind was already running through the scenarios of how to break the news to my daughter. I could already picture her reaction, the confusion on her face, the disbelief, the sadness that would follow when she realized her own aunt didn't want her there. I dreaded that moment more than anything because I knew how deeply it would cut her. She wasn't just excited about the food, the music, or the decorations. She was excited about being present for her aunt, someone she admired and loved dearly. To be told she wasn't welcome would feel like a personal rejection, and I knew it would leave a scar. The more I thought about it, the more unsettled I became. I wondered if my sister truly understood the weight of her decision, or if she had simply convinced herself that it was a minor detail, something no one would really take too seriously. Maybe to her, my daughter was just one guest out of many. But to us, it wasn't about being another name on the guest list. It was about belonging, about family, about honoring the bond that had always existed between them. Excluding her didn't just send a message about the wedding, it sent a message about her place in the family. In that moment, I felt a storm building inside me. Part of me wanted to respect my sister's choices and stay silent, but another part of me was burning with anger at the unfairness of it all. I knew I couldn't just shrug it off or pretend it didn't matter. The thought of my daughter sitting at home, dressed up but uninvited, while the rest of us celebrated was unbearable. And yet, that was the reality my sister had laid before us, a decision that left me torn between family loyalty and protecting my child from heartbreak. When I finally told my daughter that her aunt didn't want her at the wedding, the reaction was exactly what I had feared. At first, she didn't believe me. She looked at me with this puzzled expression, waiting for me to laugh or admit that I was joking. But when she realized from my face that I wasn't, her smile slowly disappeared, replaced with a look of confusion that quickly shifted into disbelief. "Too young," she repeated, her voice breaking slightly, as though the words themselves didn't make sense to her. I could see the hurt settling in, even as she tried to process what it meant. She had been so invested in the entire wedding process, asking questions, planning outfits, imagining the day in vivid detail. And now, all of that excitement seemed to vanish in a matter of seconds. Her shoulders slumped, and she sat there quietly, staring at the floor. I could almost see the thoughts running through her mind, all the moments she had dreamed about suddenly slipping away. It wasn't just about missing an event. It was about missing a moment she had been emotionally preparing for, a memory she had wanted to build with her family. She asked me why. The way she asked was so soft, almost fragile, as if she was bracing herself for an answer that would hurt even more. I told her the truth, that her aunt wanted an adult-only event, that she had decided no one under 18 should be there. My daughter's eyes filled with tears. "But I'm not a kid," she whispered. And she was right. At 17, she wasn't a child anymore, not in the way her aunt was suggesting. She was mature, thoughtful, and carried herself with a sense of responsibility that even some adults didn't manage to show. Hearing that she was being dismissed purely because of a number felt insulting to her, as though all the growth she had achieved didn't matter at all. The sadness turned into frustration. She asked why exceptions couldn't be made, especially since she was so close to her aunt. "She always said I was special to her," she said through tears, "but I guess I'm not special enough to be there." That sentence cut through me like a knife. I hated that she was left feeling unwanted, as if her presence would somehow ruin the celebration. To her, weddings weren't about fancy rules or rigid guest lists. They were about love, family, and being together. And now she was being told she didn't belong in that picture. Over the next few days, I watched her spirit dim. The girl who had once been buzzing with excitement about dresses and hairstyles no longer wanted to talk about it at all. If the wedding came up in conversation, she would excuse herself from the room or sit silently, keeping her eyes down. It was as though she didn't want to be reminded of what she was missing. She stopped checking her phone for updates in the family group chat, no longer asked about decorations, and avoided any talk about celebrations. The anticipation that once lit up her face had turned into silence and withdrawal. There were moments when she tried to act indifferent, shrugging it off as though it didn't bother her. But I knew her too well to believe it. At night, I would hear her crying softly in her room, and it broke me. I wanted to fix it for her, to take away that sting of rejection, but I didn't know how. No words could undo the fact that someone she loved deeply had drawn a line and left her on the other side of it. For a 17-year-old who had always been included in family milestones, this was the first time she was being deliberately left out, and the wound cut deep. She began questioning herself, wondering if she had done something wrong. She asked me if maybe her aunt thought she would embarrass her, or if she wasn't grown up enough to be part of the event. Those questions shattered me because they revealed the insecurities that were now taking root in her heart. Instead of seeing the issue as her aunt's rigid rule, she started turning it inward, blaming herself. I reassured her over and over again that none of this was her fault, that her maturity and worth were not defined by anyone else's decisions. But still, I could see the pain linger in her eyes. The heartbreak spread beyond just missing the wedding day. It changed how she looked at her aunt. The woman she had admired and adored suddenly felt distant, almost like a stranger. She didn't want to call her anymore, didn't want to talk to her, and when her aunt's name came up, she would quietly withdraw. It wasn't rebellion or anger, it was disappointment, the kind that runs so deep it builds a quiet wall between two people who were once close. And watching that bond unravel was almost as painful as seeing her cry. Her heartbreak wasn't just about being excluded from the wedding, it was about being excluded from love, from belonging, from family. And once that realization settled into her, it became clear that the wound wasn't going to heal easily. After seeing the way my daughter's spirit crumbled, I knew I couldn't just sit back and accept my sister's decision as final. A parent's instinct is to protect their child, not only from physical harm, but also from emotional wounds that can leave lasting marks. Every time I looked at her, I saw the disappointment in her eyes, the weight of rejection she was carrying, and it stirred something inside me. It wasn't about whether my sister had the right to decide who attended her wedding. It was about whether that choice was fair, whether it honored the bond between an aunt and her niece, and whether I, as a mother, could allow my daughter to endure that kind of heartbreak without at least standing up for her. At first, I tried reasoning with myself. Maybe it was just one day, just one event, and maybe I should focus on not creating drama in the family. But the more I thought about it, the less peace I found in that line of thinking. I knew my daughter would remember this exclusion forever, and I also knew that staying silent would make me complicit in her pain. Silence, in this case, would mean I was choosing convenience over her feelings, and that wasn't something I could live with. I started by trying to talk to my sister again. I called her and explained, calmly but firmly, just how much this wedding meant to my daughter. I told her how she had been planning, daydreaming, and counting down the days. I shared how close they were, how deeply she admired her, and how this decision was breaking her heart. I reminded her that my daughter wasn't some unruly child who would cause disruptions. She was respectful, mature, and fully capable of handling herself in a formal setting. My sister listened, but her voice stayed cold. She repeated her stance, adult only, no exceptions, not even for my daughter. Hanging up that call, I felt a rush of frustration. I wasn't just disappointed in her decision. I was disappointed in the lack of empathy. Family is supposed to understand, to make room for each other, to bend the rules when love demands it. But here she was, rigidly holding onto her vision of a perfect wedding, even at the cost of wounding someone she claimed to love. That realization fueled me. I knew that if she wasn't going to reconsider, then I needed to decide what my response would be. I spent sleepless nights going back and forth. Part of me worried about the fallout. Standing up to her could mean tension, arguments, and maybe even a permanent crack in our relationship. But every time I thought about those possibilities, I compared them to the image of my daughter sitting at home while the rest of us celebrated. That picture alone was unbearable. It wasn't just about a party, it was about showing my daughter that she mattered, that she was worth fighting for, that her pain was not invisible. That's when I made my decision. If my daughter wasn't welcome, then I wasn't going to sit at that wedding smiling as though everything was fine. I wasn't going to dress up, clap, and take pictures while my daughter sat excluded. Family or not, no event was worth compromising my responsibility to stand by her. I decided that I would prioritize her feelings over appearances, that my loyalty as a mother came before my role as a sister. I didn't make this decision lightly. I thought about the years of history with my sister, the bond we had shared, the countless times we had leaned on each other. But I also thought about the future, about the kind of message I wanted to leave for my daughter. Did I want her to remember her mother as someone who let her be cast aside without protest? Or did I want her to remember that when she was hurt, her mother stood beside her, no matter the consequences? The answer to that was clear. Even after making the decision in my heart, I wrestled with how to approach it. Should I confront my sister directly and tell her I wouldn't attend without my daughter, or should I simply step back quietly? Should I give her one more chance to reconsider, or should I draw the line firmly? These thoughts weighed on me, but deep down I knew that action was necessary. The specifics of how I carried it out mattered less than the conviction behind it. What mattered most was that my daughter saw she wasn't alone in this, that someone was willing to take a stand for her when she felt rejected and small. The decision wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about values. It was about teaching my daughter through action that love is not conditional, that her worth isn't defined by arbitrary rules, and that when someone tries to diminish her place in the world, she has every right to expect the people who love her to defend it. It was about showing her that family isn't only about shared blood, it's about shared loyalty, compassion, and respect. When the day of the wedding finally arrived, the atmosphere in the family was split in two. On one side, there was excitement and chatter, relatives posting pictures of their outfits and updating each other about the decorations and music. On the other side was the silence in my home, where my daughter sat quietly, scrolling past those updates, pretending not to care while I could see the heaviness in her eyes. I had already made my choice, and though it wasn't an easy one, I knew it was the right one. I stayed with her. I didn't put on a dress or do my hair, didn't drive to the venue, didn't sit among the guests clapping and smiling. Instead, I remained by her side, making it clear that if she wasn't welcome, then I wasn't going either. The decision shocked many in the family. Text messages and phone calls poured in, some filled with confusion, others with disappointment. A few accused me of being dramatic, of turning a small rule into a big statement. They told me I should have respected my sister's wishes, that one evening of celebration shouldn't have been sacrificed. But those people didn't see the way my daughter had cried at night, or how she had lost her spark in the weeks leading up to the wedding. They didn't feel the weight of that rejection the way I had, and they didn't understand that this wasn't just about attending a party, it was about protecting a young heart from feeling abandoned. I could sense that my absence was felt at the wedding. A couple of relatives sent me pictures from the ceremony, as if trying to make me feel guilty for missing it, but instead those pictures only strengthened my resolve. I saw my sister in her gown, looking beautiful, surrounded by smiling faces. But I also knew that behind those polished photos, there was an empty seat where I should have been, a reminder that her decision had consequences. I wasn't there to clap when she walked down the aisle, wasn't there to pose in family pictures, wasn't there to celebrate her carefully planned day. And while that absence may have stung her, it was nothing compared to what my daughter would have felt if I had gone and left her behind. At home, I tried to make the day softer for my daughter. We cooked together, we watched a movie, we ordered her favorite food. It wasn't the same as a wedding, but it was our way of turning what could have been the hardest day into something manageable. She didn't smile as easily as she usually did, but she noticed what I was doing. At one point, she looked at me and said quietly, "Thank you for not leaving me." That single sentence reminded me why I had made the choice. Weddings come and go, but moments like that shape the way a child understands love and loyalty. In the days that followed, the ripple effects began to show. Some relatives were supportive, telling me they admired my decision and that they understood why I did it. Others were critical, saying I had overreacted and made the wedding about myself. My sister, however, was furious. She accused me of disrespecting her, of ruining what should have been the happiest day of her life by turning it into a family conflict. I listened to her words, but I didn't argue back. Deep inside, I knew she was lashing out not just because I wasn't there, but because she was confronted with the truth that her decision had hurt someone who had always looked up to her. My daughter noticed the whispers too. She heard the way some relatives tried to downplay her pain, telling her she would understand when she was older, that it wasn't personal. But to her, it was personal. It was about being told she wasn't worthy of being included in a moment that should have been shared with the entire family. And while those relatives may have thought their words were comforting, what truly comforted her was knowing I had chosen her over appearances, that I had refused to let her sit alone while I pretended everything was fine. The unexpected outcome wasn't in changing my sister's mind or in smoothing over the conflict, it was in the bond that grew stronger between me and my daughter. She saw, in the most real way, that her feelings mattered, that when she was hurt, I stood by her even when it cost me something important. It shifted the way she looked at family, the way she looked at me, and even the way she looked at herself. Instead of seeing rejection as a reflection of her worth, she began to understand that love is proven in actions, and that sometimes you have to draw boundaries even within your own family. Over time, I realized that what I did wasn't just for her, it was also for me. It was a statement about the kind of parent I wanted to be and the kind of values I wanted to uphold. The wedding may have gone on without us, but in our small home, something much bigger took place, a lesson in loyalty, in courage, and in choosing love over social expectation.